Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Flag to Grand Canyon Social Power Hour. This is the Injury-Free with Nate Koch edition, and pretty excited to have Nate on board. Nate and his team at Endurance Rehab are responsible for taking me to not only a marathon state championship, but also a second place at the Whiskey Off-Road and a lot of other great finishes during my riding career. Before we get started, I want to go over a few things, though. Just the standard housekeeping. At any time during the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenters. And to do so, you just type your questions into the Q&A or chat at the bottom of the control panel. As time allows, the presenters will address as many questions as they can during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We're going to be recording the session and actually broadcasting on Facebook Live, so you'll be able to kind of recap, and we may possibly use portions of the video for promotional purposes in the future. The donations from your events go to our good friends at the Marine League Charities. We've been donating for over a year now, and they're a really great not-for-profit charitable corporation organized for the purpose of supporting charities, including those organized to assist children of Northern Arizona, and those charities benefiting members of the U.S. Armed Forces. They also include the Flagstaff Community Toys for Tots organization, Flagstaff Arts and Sports Together, also known as FAST. Over the past few years, they've provided assistance to Northern Arizona and Williams High School cycling teams. They're one of the largest fundraisers, or we're one of the largest fundraisers for this organization. And, they're extremely grateful for the work that we do and the money that we're raised, this very thing that we're doing this year in this very unique way. So we can't thank you guys enough for being part of it. And of course, any donations you guys can put in to help us raise great money for the Marine League Charities is going to really go towards the cause and really help those kids, especially in this tough year on the Navajo Nation that's getting hit so hard. Last year, it was pretty amazing. We were able to contribute 80% of all the funds for the Marine Leagues of Northern Arizona. It's roughly $85,000. $5,000 to Flagstaff youth programs. That's funding the youth cycling teams. We had $5,000 go to the Flagstaff food bank. That was sent to the Navajo Nation as part of COVID relief. $7,500 to the community college scholarship endowment. $40,000 went to Toys for Tots, buying 21,000 toys and books provided to the Northern Arizona Navajo community. Pretty amazing stuff there. It's pretty cool because Toys for Tots is a top charity in the Philanthropy 400, and it's got a program to support a ratio of about 97-3. So that every dollar you donate is really going to be maximized to that charity. So it's just a really cool thing, especially considering what's going on with COVID and the Navajo Nation and their special relationship that they have together. Ever since its inception in 1947, it's expanded to include a lot of other tribes across the country. But here in Arizona, it serves the Navajo, Hopi, Apache, and Yaqui communities. So let's get into the meat of it today here. We'll be speaking with Nate Koch from Endurance Rehab today. And, the questions are, we spend a lot of time, energy, and money preparing for big events. Even years past, Flag to Grand Canyon. This is a lot of hours you spend. You're spending a lot of money on your bike, your training. This is time and all that stuff. And there's always those unknowns. There's always something that might creep up, maybe an ache or pain that doesn't get better, gets a little bit worse. So how do you stay injury-free when you're ramping up for miles or just getting off the couch? Well, Nate's going to share with us the latest techniques and technology to treat the underlying causes of your aches and pains. During the interactive session, you're going to be able to ask Nate your own sports-related questions by entering questions into the chat box. Now, for a little bit of a backstory, Nate Koch founded the Endurance Rehab with the goal of providing the most complete and comprehensive physical therapy and available to injuries. Endurance Rehab is nationally and locally recognized for injury recovery and its prevention techniques. Nate has served as a physical therapy consultant to the Trek Segafredo professional cycling team since back in 2015. And they've also, Nate has been a longtime supporter of the Flag to Grand Canyon ride since its very beginning in '99. So, a huge shout out to the crew at Endurance Rehab and Nate for all of their support. And, I'm excited to chat here because I bet Nate's got some pretty exciting and informative stories that he's going to share with us about just his day-to-day experience over at Endurance Rehab and, of course, working with the Trek Segafredo cycling team. So, Nate, Why don't you share with us a little bit? Give us a little background. What's it like working with a world level pro team, and what are some of the experiences that you gained there that you're able to help deliver to the common everyman and woman like us folks here?
Hey, thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on. And the first thing I have to say is that it actually, what led me to working with a team was helping people like you and lots of people that have done this ride over the years, and local cyclists over the last 20 years kind of prepared me for the position working with this team. So without all the experience I gained over the last 20 years in Arizona, I would never been able to do the job I'm doing with this team. So it's kind of been built over many years, and they saw what we were doing in Arizona and asked me to be a part of it in 2015. And I've been lucky enough to hang on for the last 5 years and hopefully through this season as well and upcoming seasons. But working with the team has been like any professional team. It just takes the care another notch. I mean, the athletes, this is their job. So where all the folks we see at our office, they usually have other jobs and families, and they have other commitments in their life, and they're certainly want to get better. But for a team, for professional cyclists, this is their job. So managing their body is critical to their success and frankly to their paycheck. So it's really important to them that they stay on top of any injury prevention techniques or modalities they can to stay healthy through a whole season. Being a part of that team has been phenomenal. I mean, we have some of the best riders in the world, of course, on the team, and have had over the last 5 years. And so it's allowed me to see what even minor changes to, whether it's a training program, a millimeter on a bike fit, or just one simple stretch, changing one stretch or one strengthening exercise, the impact that has on their ability to ride pain-free or to improve their performance or improve their aerodynamic position. So it's been a lot of fun for me.
Sure. So Nate, take us through. It's interesting. So you built on 20 plus years of experience in physical therapy, and you made that leap to the pro ranks, so to speak, where when I'm at a bike race, I tell everybody, let's be cool, let's be friendly. Nobody's paychecks are counting on this, nobody's home mortgage. But at that level where you're working, like you said, these are careers, these are paychecks, these are hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars in sponsor money that are kind of riding on each piece of this complex machine that you're part of on the Trek Segafredo machine. So how does that extremely high standard that you got to keep with your top level world level athletes, how do you trickle that down to working with the local folks like us?
Yeah, the assessment wise, what we do with the riders is really no different. It's really the expectations that we have that are a little bit different. So the techniques that we use with the riders, the assessment techniques we use, whether it's range of motion, flexibility, core strength, we'll use those same tests with local riders, with whether it's just a recreational rider or Cat 5 to Cat 1 rider. It's the same assessments, but the expectation level is different. So that meaning what we expect them to get to as an end result with regards to strength or a certain range of motion, and also the expectation of what we give them. How often are you going to do it? So if I give you some homework to do, I may expect someone, a recreational rider, okay, what's reasonable? You have a job, you want to train, you have kids, you have a dog to walk. Okay, so maybe it's 15 minutes a day of doing something, where as a pro rider, I'm going to say, look, I know what you have to do today. You got plenty of time for this. Here's an hour of stuff. This is what you got to do before you ride. This is what you have to do after you ride. And then this is what you have to do strength training off the bike. So obviously it's a coordinated program with me, their coach, the bike fitter. We all work together to create that program. So that's also the difference, is that, in that pro scenario, we're really coordinating everything as a group working with, it's a very collaborative effort between the coach, myself, and the fitter on getting the athletes dialed in perfectly. So that's another, probably, we spend more time on working together than we probably would with a normal recreational cyclist.
Sure. Now, one of the services you guys offer at Endurance Rehab is foot orthotics. And that's maybe something, in endurance sport, hey, our feet do an important job, but the fine tuning, so to speak, where foot orthotics come into play, that's not something we're generally thinking about a whole lot. Can you take us through that a little bit, and the importance of dialing in those feet and getting them where they need to be, and how that improves performance?
Sure, yeah, and in cycling in specific, because it's different depending on the sport, but in cycling specific, you have 3 major contact points on the bike. Obviously, your hands, your saddle, and then your feet. And if something goes wrong at any one of those 3 contact points, it affects the other contact points. Meaning, if you have a arch that's really collapsed, a foot that's really flat, let's say on your left side, well, then you're gonna adjust at your saddle as well and at your hands. So the contact points are all going to be affected to a certain degree. And then over time, many revolutions, eventually there can be abnormal breakdown and injury. That's obviously what we're trying to avoid. With orthotics and cycling shoes, the history of a cycling shoe has been that they're rigid, relatively uncomfortable. They don't come usually with anything supportive in it. And so supporting the arch and creating a nice platform where you're applying force to the pedal is critical, so you don't lose any force as you start to push into the pedal. Besides the fact that it allows better alignment, foot, ankle, to the knee, to the hip, we look at that alignment when we're prescribing these. I'll tell you, on the Trek Segafredo team, almost the whole team has a pair and wears them. They have multiple pairs they'll wear in their cycling shoes and then outside of their cycling shoes. But they recognize the importance of comfort, for sure, as number 1, and number 2, power transfer.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get those watts to the pedals and that power to the wheel, for sure. So, Nate, working with these big teams, you get to travel around the world a little bit for work and stuff like that. You get to maybe be with some of the athletes and riders in the downtime. Any interesting stories working with some of these Trek Segafredo riders?
Well, yeah, one really comes to mind is that when one of the early years I started, I realized that in pro cycling, their contracts go January to December, basically. So we have a camp in the beginning of December, and anybody that's new to the team for the next upcoming year in the December camp, they're not able to wear anything related to their new team. So they can't wear any clothing related. They can't ride, for instance, a Trek bike. They can't have anything associated with Trek or the new team on their body or riding, and that's because their contracts don't end until December 31st. I didn't realize that, and of course we start this camp a few years ago, and this is right after we signed Alberto Contador, and so obviously he's a big name, very accomplished cyclist, and he's also very active on Instagram and his social media, and so he was at a loss throughout the camp. He was having a hard time figuring out what can I post, what can I post, and struggling with that. And then I had not met him yet. He came to see me, and we did our assessment. And he said, "Oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. I can put this on Instagram. But I want to do it better first. Let me do these tests more. I want to practice a little more." He kept wanting to practice, he wanted to perfect everything. Every test that I did, he wanted to perfect. And then he wanted the video. I mean, he was what you would expect out of an accomplished athlete like that, like super competitive. And we liken that to, a lot of people saw the Michael Jordan documentaries and how competitive he was. And I think that's probably true of a lot of the top athletes in the world. And certainly it was with Alberto. He was uber competitive with any test we did. He wanted to win. He wanted to be the best at everything we did. So that was cool. He did shot some video and was able to at least post something, and that made him feel good. Also, I thought it was pretty cool.
Right on, man. Wow, that is just wild. I mean, I guess that's part of what gets those guys to the top level. Of course, being, for lack of a better term, genetic freaks, and then of course stumbling on to the sport that your body was so just by the genetic lottery just specifically designed for, and then also having that extreme level of competitiveness is pretty much the combination that's required to get to that level, I guess. So Nate, can you why don't you take us and lead us through how you evaluate cyclists? I know you got a couple of videos that you submitted for us to show, and show us what that's all about.
Yeah. So in general, our cycling analysis or cycling assessment, we do a musculoskeletal assessment. And so obviously we first sit down with the athlete, we talk to them about their history of injuries, anything currently going on. We want to find out what are they currently doing with the core and mobility program, who's done their bike fit, when was the last bike fit. We talk what's their training like, what are their goals like for the upcoming year. So it's a conversation first, and then we go into our assessment, and we do a postural assessment, range of motion, flexibility, and we're looking at every part of the body from the head down to the feet. And then we'll take them through manual strength testing, so isolated muscle tests, and then we'll go through some functional strength testing that's related to the bike. And so after that assessment, which usually takes about an hour and a half, we take all the data that we collected and we create a program for the athlete. So it kind of depends if they have any current issues or current diagnosis or pain. We're going to gear it towards fixing that. If they have nothing, we're going to work on all the limitations that we think will impact their bike performance. Usually at that level, we are talking about comfort with some of the athletes, but typically it's more performance related, where in the recreational athlete, it's more comfort related. So I think some of the videos that I submitted, one's a mobility test that we do, one's a strength test we do, and one's more of a functional strength test that we do. So if you want to get some of the videos up, I can kind of walk through, but these are just 3 examples. The test, there's probably at least 50 tests that I do with them. These are 30. So, these are just examples, but you can certainly try these. Don't hurt yourself. But they're relatively simple. The first one's a 90-90 spinal rotation test. It's for mobility. And mostly with this test, we're looking mostly at mid-back or thoracic mobility.
You ready?
Ready. Shoot.
Test is a 90-90 trunk mobility test. So we're going to test this on, it's a very simple trunk mobility test. We're going to test it on each side. Have the athlete lay on their side like this, hips and knees at 90 degrees. It's really important that the knees are stacked and they're directly on top of each other. That the top knee is not behind the bottom knee. Okay? So the knees are stacked. Okay? You're going to have them rotate back as far as they can. Okay? They should be able to, normal is to go all the way flat like this. But you see, for me, now my top knee is behind my bottom knee, so I'm cheating. It's really important that you keep them here to get an accurate read. Okay? This would be normal. About halfway is moderate tightness, and then severe tightness up here like this. And we, of course, would test both sides. The most important thing we're doing is we're looking at symmetry between sides. So you can measure, if you want to get a little more accurate, you can measure from the acromion down to the ground and up. You can measure in millimeters and compare sides that way. Compare with a fist. You can eyeball it, you can video it. But it's real important to know if there's a dramatic difference between left and right side. Small differences is not as important, but dramatic is important. That can affect how the cyclist will sit on the saddle. And now that can be a cause of a pelvic rotation on the bike, but it also can be just an effect of something else that's going wrong in the body, causing you to get tighter or stiffer with left rotation or right rotation. So it can be cause or effect either way. You don't need to understand that as much as you see the effect of decreased mobility, particularly right to left.
Right on. So, all right. Well, there we go. We got our first one up. What do you got for us next? Any additional comments you want to make on that one?
Yeah, when you look at that one, we're really just, that's mostly testing thoracic or mid-back mobility. It's pretty simple to see the difference left to right. It's really most athletes can feel and see the difference if they're different left to right. That's really important because that does affect how you sit on the saddle. And then that test becomes a treatment. Basically, that becomes homework. If you're seeing like it's okay, I'm 50% less on one side or the other. Okay, guess what? You're going to do a lot. You're going to do a ton on that side where you're restricted. You're going to do 0 on the side you're not restricted.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of giving exercises, if someone asked me to send them exercises, I could send you some that say, okay, I want you to do 2 sets of 10 on each side, or I want you to do 30 seconds on each side, or the value of the assessment is, okay, you were restricted 50% on the right. I want you to work on the right side. Don't worry about the left, right? Okay, because that's not going to benefit you. That's not going to get you anywhere. It's going to take up more time that you don't have, and it's also not doing anything. So you're really trying to get, unlike a lot of other sports, cycling demands symmetry, and our bodies are not symmetrical. Just no one's perfectly symmetrical. Can't be. And so, but we have to try to get close to that because the machine requires that so that you can sit straight on your saddle. So we try to get close to that. We try to look everywhere we can with strength and mobility to get as close to symmetry as we can.
Sure. And I remember that when I went in for my evaluation at Endurance Rehab with Wolfgang, I mean, and we did everything, and he evaluated my pedal stroke. It was really heavy on symmetry, and he gave me a lot of homework to really get things dialed in on that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you got so what's our next video? What do we got? What do we got coming up next?
I think is it side plank next?
Yeah, it's side plank.
Right on. Well, she's getting that queued up, Nate.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about side planking?
Yeah. So side plank test is obviously, like most people have tried some form of a side plank probably, if you've done any core work. And that is a core quotation marks test, but it also does test lateral glute strength, or you may hear physical therapists refer to it as gluteus medius strength. And so there's variations of that test, and we use variations of it based on what athlete we have. So if we have someone who's really recreational, is not real athletic, we'll use a modified version. Or if someone's in pain, we use a modified version. Versus when we're testing the Trek Segafredo guys, it's more advanced.
And so it's interesting because when it comes to core strength, a strong core is really critical to an efficient pedal stroke. Yet cycling doesn't necessarily exercise the core, does it?
Not really. I mean, you engage your core obviously to be stable, and right, and especially when you're out of the saddle sprinting or you're racing a crit, maybe you are engaging the core at times. But yeah, I mean, in cycling, we're really to use maybe some words I'm not sure everybody's aware with, but movement is sagittal movement. So we're really moving in a straight plane of motion on the bike, right? We don't move laterally or rotationally, and we need that lateral and rotational strength to help us sit stable in the saddle and have our arms stable on the bars and our feet stable on the pedals. If we're not strong and stable, or we're asymmetrically strong or weak, then yeah, we're going to be twisted a little bit on the bike, or we're going to lose aerodynamic position. Which that's one of the big keys in the pro team is the stronger we can get your core, the more aero we can probably make you in your TT bike, which means faster, more watts.
Seconds or even tens of seconds, which go a long way in a 3-week Grand Tour.
Yeah, we always like to use at our office. We always, and probably other people use it too, the analogy of you can't shoot a cannon out of a canoe, right? So the cannon being it's Josh's big huge quads, you know, like he's worked on these quads. They're beautiful, Quadzilla, but he's noodle core, nothing, right? So the core is a canoe. So you start to apply force, you just flop all over the place up top, right? So you have to be balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. Balance is key. All right, Janet, are we ready with that video?
Yep, I got it this time.
Cool.
The next test is a strength test for hip stability. So in cycling, we're moving in a straight plane, right? And mostly in that sagittal plane of movement. We don't really move in the frontal or transverse plane very much. So we do need that strength in those planes of movement to create stability around the saddle. So we're going to test glute medius, glute strength, okay, with a side plank. So some of your clients, this is the easiest way to start, is just a modified side plank. Can they hold this position here like this? And some clients, this may be it for them. The next option is to have a leg out like this. Can they hold this position? Okay, obviously body is straight, trunk is straight, their hips aren't dropping, okay? Can they hold this position? Okay, the next is can they get up and hold just a normal side plank position? And the final advanced position is a leg up in the air like this. And how long can they hold that position for? Ideally, it just depends on what kind of cyclist you have, right? So you're dealing with a cyclist that's recreational, is a bit older, is just doing it for fun and wants more comfort. Yeah, the modified side planks we did there in the beginning, that'd be more applicable test for them versus an athlete that is racing. They should be able to do that last one with the leg in the air. They should be able to hold that for at least 30 seconds. And of course, we're going to test both sides and look for differences. Is there one side that's worse than the other? I will tell you what's very important when we test this is we test one side and then we do other tests and then we come back to test the other side. Because if you test one side and then the other right after it, you're going to get that second one always weaker because you use both sides when you're doing this test, especially when you do that last one with the leg in the air. Good.
Going back to symmetry and core strength, just like we talked about.
Yeah, and I would just say I'd reiterate that last thing I said in the video is that you don't want to test one side and then go right to the other side. You don't want to test left side and then go, okay, let's do the right side and test the other side. So if you're trying it at home, you test let's say test your right side and then give it about 5 minutes. You know, go do something else for about 5 minutes or go do the other test and then come back and do the left side because you're using both sides when you do the test. And so you'll get a false positive that you're really weak on that second tested side when you're really not. So you really need to let it recover before you do the other side.
Right on, right on. All right. Well, final video coming up now. What do we got, Nate, on this last one?
Last one's a single leg squat test, and we're looking at alignment. We're looking at hip, knee, foot, and ankle alignment. And this is one we really like. We like to look at it from the front and from the side, and it gives us a picture of maybe, like if I haven't seen this athlete on the bike, this maybe gives me an idea what they might look like from a tracking perspective on the bike. So I might be able to see some hip instability. I might be able to see their knee falling in, like towards the top tube, or maybe going out. foot collapse. And then looking at them from the side, I might see their knee going forward of their toes, like going forward to the pedal axle or behind it. So we learn a little bit of what they might look like before we get them on the bike.
Right on. It's interesting. I was just thinking about, you know, a lot of what you're saying. You guys really are architects. The human body is like a building with a structure and a frame, and yet, unlike a building, that structure and frame has to move. And depending on the level of performance you're looking for, you really there's so much work on this complex structure that can be fine-tuned, and finding all the different ways to do that is just, it's really mind-blowing stuff.
It's
You know?
I mean, obviously everything has to work together. You know, you can't single out just the foot. Okay, here's the foot and that's it, right? I mean, it affects what's happening at your hands on the bike and vice versa. Like a great example is we've had one of the pro athletes that he had seen, it was my first year with the team, and he saw the previous year's therapist, and they said, hey, he's coming in, like he's had these 2 years, he's had this problem. He keeps yelling at his mechanic because his hood, he thinks his hood is misplaced, is back too far on one side. And he keeps telling his mechanic, oh, you're messing up my bike. I don't know why you're messing up my hoods. I don't know what you're doing. Mechanic's like, oh, it's perfect. You know, I don't know what's going on. And they said, look, his knee's going out at the top of the pedal stroke. He's got this hood issue. Like, you know, can you look at him, you know, see what you think. Why is he doing this? And they had thought maybe it was a hip issue. And so through the exam, you know, typically you think cycling, you think legs and hips, and okay, you're going to look at all that, but from history, you know, almost all these guys have had clavicle fractures, right? They've all gone down at some point in their career. So you have to examine the shoulder and upper extremity and the C-spine or the neck too. And so what turns out is that he had at least a 50% decrease in tricep strength on that side that he had fractured his clavicle. And so he could not support himself on that side. So we were like testing side plank. It was less, like we tried to have him do a push up and he's shifting to the other side. And you could measure the circumference of his arm and it was significantly less, a few centimeters less. So all that kind of, after a while, you put the pieces together and it just tells you again, like, it doesn't matter, whatever you're off or whatever you have an issue, whether it's at your hand or close to your hand, at your saddle or at your feet, it's gonna affect the whole chain. And that's what makes it so fun, is you have to be detective. I didn't get that, you know, like, oh, I got it right away within 10 minutes. It took me an hour and a half, spending an hour and a half with him and talking to him and talking to the team doctor and talking to the coach, talking to the mechanic. And so it took a lot of work to get to that end result, but super satisfying and fun for like a medical person. Oh yeah, okay, we figured it out. You know, it's just being a detective. You know, that's the fun part about the job for sure.
Solving the mysteries.
Yep.
There it is. All right, well, let's get on to the next video and take a look.
Last test is a single leg squat test. And with this test, we're looking for alignment. Okay, so we're gonna have the person, their arms out in front of them. Okay, they're gonna stand on one leg. Okay, their leg is gonna be out in front of them. Their other leg's gonna be out in front of them like this. And they're gonna squat about halfway down and back up. It's okay if they lean down a little bit like this. If they're leaning forward, that's fine, okay? Just like that. And have them repeat that 3 times on each leg. And what we're going to look for is, from the front view especially, okay, we're going to look for, what is the foot doing? Is it collapsing in at the foot? So we ideally do this barefoot. The second thing we're looking at is, what is the knee doing? Is it tracking in line with the hip and the foot, much like we do on the bike? The last thing at the hip we're looking at, is the hip dropping on the opposite side? That would indicate some glute weakness, which we probably would have already seen in the side plank as well. Okay, but we're looking for that hip drop here like this, knee falling in, knee collapsing out. What's the foot doing? Okay, are they able to do it? then we come to the side. So come around to the side. And from this side, we're going to look at it from the side. Now, does their knee really go really far forward over their toes? And do they struggle if you ask them to bring the knee back? In that instance, they're more quad dominant, less glute dominant. If, when they squat down, their knee is behind their toes really far, and they struggle with bringing their knee forward, then they are glute dominant, less quad dominant. So that kind of gives us an idea of maybe where they need to be placed on the bike in positioning, but it also tells us where they're weak at, where the areas they can maybe improve.
Quiet.
Oh yeah, no, you're both. Wow, so I'm just Nate, it's just wild because the more and more we get into this, it's just we're down a rabbit hole with all these things, and it's amazing, all these techniques, but once again we're back to all these indicators and all these little things and all this information that we can glean from all these exercises that give us more and more information to help us get more dialed on the bike. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and for us, as therapists, like this, like I said, this is 3 of probably 50 tests that we do. It's real important, like when we're teaching new graduates in physical therapy too, like don't jump to conclusions. You go through everything, paint this picture, and wait till the picture's over. Finish the picture, and then sit back and look at it and think about it. And so that's how we view it, and at least in our practice, or how we kind of teach people is, okay, go through the whole exam, go through everything, and then look at it, and then, okay, what makes sense and what matters to this person's problem. Because we're always I can evaluate 100 asymptomatic, meaning no pain or no issues, cyclists, right? I can find something wrong with all of them. So what matters? And that's what really you have to get down to is, yeah, okay, their triceps weak or their glutes weak, but does it matter? Does it affect the problem that they're having on the bike, or does it affect their performance? And so you really have to then, otherwise what you end up with, and of course I was guilty of this too when I was younger, is you end up sending people 2 hours of exercises. They just say, okay, well, I got to fix everything, and then here's 20, 30, 50 exercises, right? So you really have to then step back and go, okay, well, all right, well, what's the issue, and how do we get there the quickest way possible? And certainly that takes time and experience. And I've, like I said in the beginning, I've only gotten to this point with the team because of all the people like you that we've seen over the years that have made me better, made me think differently and more, and invest and be more of an investigative cycling PT. It's mainly all the experience I've gained in Arizona. So.
Sure. And of course we see a lot of, you bring up Arizona. We get a lot of pro teams that come to Arizona. We get our fair share up in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, and a lot in Tucson. Is that how you kind of made your connection with the Trek Segafredo team, or was it through a different avenue?
Well, they had if we saw a few of their triathletes that they sponsor, and so one of their major triathletes that came out and was training, and we were working with, someone from Trek came with them, and kind of wanted to see what I was doing, but also what Psychologic or Port McGlenn, who takes care of their fitting, what he was doing. And so how did we work together? And so Koch from Psychologic was already doing work with the team, and so he started with that team before I did, and so that was really kind of how I got in with them. Is they came out with this triathlete, turned out that they weren't super happy with their physio that they had, and they said, well, you're working with these triathletes and these cyclists in Arizona, and they came over and, will you do an assessment on me? Let me see what you do? They kind of, they quizzed me, to see what my skill level was, I guess. And then,
Sure.
And I was nothing I applied for. It was something that through the connections that way that happened. And so
yeah. Wow. Very cool story. So we got a few Q&As. I know Brian Stinson had a great question. Brian, you want to jump in and throw that out to Nate?
Yeah, I think for a lot of recreational cyclists like myself, I think, oh, I don't really need to get my bike fitted or get tested because it's probably good enough. So I'm curious if you have a story about maybe the most minor change that you made that had the biggest impact.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I would say not, I'll say non-bike fitting because, and with the team, for instance, I work with the fitter and I'm sure they have tons of stories that they can relate to that. But from a PT standpoint, like minor changes, okay, just do this and let's see how that goes. It would go back to maybe one of those tests that we first did, the 90-90. We had someone who was sitting with the right side of their pelvis forward on the saddle and getting saddle sores. And so from those who don't know, saddle sores is kind of like a blister in your private area. It's not really fun. It inhibits your cycling and it inhibits your life. So it's a really painful thing. And so when we examined this person, we saw a 75% difference in rotation in their lumbar and thoracic spine. And so we gave them just a few things, just you got to get this better, just a couple things, get this better. And within 3 or 4 weeks, there was a 50% improvement in where they were. And they lined up perfectly on the saddle. They felt no pressure in that where they had the saddle sore. So they were able to continue to ride and not with that pressure being alleviated. So that was huge. And so that made such an impact on them. They sent like 3 thank you letters after that. But, so that one really stands out. I mean, it was something that you can imagine would be pretty painful and was a pretty quick fix when a lot of times we're not able to make quick fixes.
Wow, pretty cool. Now, Jamie Brown, that's with us, one of our panelists. She's got an exciting question. I'm going to give it over to her. Go ahead, Jamie.
Thanks, Josh. Nate, just out of curiosity, there are athletes, of course, that lose a limb due to an accident, or they were born without a limb, but they become very great athletes. Any advice on that?
Yeah, we work with a few. We've seen a few of those folks over the years, and that's when having a physical therapist work with your fitter is really helpful and critical. Obviously I'm biased as a physical therapist, but when you have both minds working together, the fitter understands what's available from an equipment standpoint. So they usually know, okay, well, I know these bars, I know what these bars are available, these pedals available, this saddle available, this width, etc. Where a lot of therapists don't know those particulars, but they understand the body and they understand, okay, what can be reasonable for this person to tolerate over however many revolutions they're going to ride. So that is a teamwork person, if there ever is a teamwork person. It has to be, in my opinion, a team approach.
Right on. Well, Brian, or Nate, it has been really exciting having you here. And, once again, we can't thank you enough for all the amazing support that you've given the Flagstaff to Grand Canyon charity ride over the years. We got some great items for this year. Looks like a month worth of recovery boots. We got some custom orthotics. We got $100 off a medical bike fit with Psychologic, physical performance evaluation. That's $160 value. We got some dry needling sessions. Tell us, just take a minute or two. Tell us a little bit about dry needling.
Yeah, if for those not familiar, the needles are the same type of needles that an acupuncturist uses. The major difference between us, how we use it, and an acupuncturist is we're using it for trigger points. And so we're going to put needles into an area that that's tender or painful where your injury is, versus in acupuncture, they're using different zones to put it. So they may treat your knee pain by putting needles in your head or in your foot. We're going to go right to the knee and right into the patellar tendon or into the knee to treat the knee pain. So we use it for pain, to relax muscle tissue, and for a lot of times we're using a lot for tendinopathies. In other words, tendonitis.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Well, there you go, guys. Nate, we can't thank you and Endurance Rehab enough. Your information that you shared. I know I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I know this is a fraction of a fraction. This is the tip of the iceberg of what it's all about. So we can't thank you guys enough. Guys, don't forget to get in there and see Endurance Rehab. They've got a lot of good stuff going on. Clearly, they know exactly what they're talking about. And if anybody can help you work through your aches and pains, get you dialed in, get you a little more aerodynamic, maybe a little more efficient on the pedal, on the bike, or whatever your sport is, they are the people to go see. So give a big shout out and go see the guys at Endurance Rehab. All right, guys, we are getting close to the end. I want to give a quick wrap up here of what we got going on. We got some killer raffle items. Those are up on the screen right now. Great stuff from Pivot, SRAM, Spark Systems, Specialized, Moxie. We got Lori's Gourmet Granola, Pit Viper sunglasses, the Flagstaff Extreme Adventure Course, Arcadia Door and Windows, McDowell Mountain Cycles, SRAM, Absolute Bikes, Simply Go, 11 Pine, lots of great stuff. It's going to be a huge raffle, just like it is every year, except this year we're going to be doing it online. You can find out more over at the our page over at flagstafftograndcanyon.com/the charity /raffle prizes. And of course, if you do want to donate to the great cause and earn those raffle tickets, you can do that over at flagtograndcanyon.com and just click on the donate button. Of course, we got the $20 and $50 raffle tickets. Guys, we got more of these great power hours coming up. We want you guys to join and your friends to be able to jump in with us. Next one coming up Saturday, July 11th at 4 p.m. This is going to be exciting. This is Staying Strong and Riding Smart with a legend. And when I say legend, legends don't come any bigger than this. He is definitely the Richard Petty of cross-country mountain biking. I'm, of course, talking about Specialized Bicycles, Mountain Bike Hall of Famer and team coach, the legendary Ned Overend. He's going to be with us at our next event, July 11th. This is not going to be one to miss. You're going to want to be there. Saturday, July 18th, 4 p.m. We got the Power Up Landing the Eagle. This is from the folks of SRAM with Eagle. We're going to be talking about the ecosystem opportunities. Some pretty cool stuff with the folks from SRAM out of Chicago. So you're going to want to make sure you're there for that. Saturday, July 25th, Power Up Driving Through the Long Rides with Anna Sparks and Taylor Ledeen. These are some of the top endurance riders in the country, and they're going to be with us. It's going to be exciting. Finally, August 1st, Power Down, the Flagstaff to Grand Canyon Happy Hour Talent Show and Raffle Event. This is going to be fun. This is going to be exciting. We can let our hair down a little bit, have some fun, show off our talents and our skills, and see who's taking home the big prizes. So we look forward to you guys joining us. Don't forget, you can donate at flagtograndcanyon.com. Click on that donate button. You want to get on that live social power hour. That's flagtograndcanyon.com/the-ride/live social power hour. And of course, let's not forget our Go the Distance challenge, the 65-mile ride or the 200+ mile ride, which for some reason the exact distance is escaping me, but it is the full length of the Grand Canyon from the east end to the west end. You can sign up for that over at flagtogc.com/the-ride/DIY-ride. And you can jump on there. So get your name into the raffle by donating in increments of $20 or $50. You can see the list of raffle items, like I said, over at the website. And we're going to keep track of your donations and contact you to get your name in the right raffle buckets. And you can also join our Go the Distance Challenge. You see the link that Brian just entered in the chat. Guys, thank you so much for attending. And of course, Nate, it's been a pleasure, man. We look forward to seeing you out there and look forward to seeing how the Trek Segafredo team does once we get back to some serious physical racing.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to see him racing. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it, Josh.
Yeah. All right, Nate, we'll see you around. Guys, it's a wrap, man. That's it.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Miles, you want to say hi to everybody?